Greetings everyone. First of all, apologies if I sound a little bit off today, but I'm having some issues with my wisdom tooth and it's causing me a little bit of discomfort. So I might sound a little bit strange or be speaking slightly differently today, although perhaps you think I sound strange anyway. I want to talk about C.S. Lewis and one of the main reasons he gave for why he so disliked Christianity. Now, C.S. Lewis, as we know, wasn't a Catholic, but he was a Christian and Anglican. Now, a lot of Catholics have read his works because they are very good. Before he was a Christian, he was an atheist, and then he converted. And when he converted, he pretty much would just write mainly about Christianity, as far as I'm aware. Now, some time ago, I decided I wanted to read some C.S. Lewis because I thought, well, he's an English author, or he was an English author, and a prominent Christian, probably the most well-known Christian writer in England, along with G.K. Chesterton. And so I went to find maybe a book I could read by him. I was actually thinking of buying Mere Christianity, because that is his kind of introduction to Christianity in a way. But I actually found a whole collection of his books that included Mere Christianity, and I thought, well, why not buy the whole collection, because it was a pretty good deal. And so I did buy the whole collection, and I've got it here. It was actually a collection of 7 books. One is missing because I'm going to be reading from that in just a moment, so I took it out already. But yeah, I bought this whole collection and I read through all the books: Mere Christianity, The Great Divorce, The Screwtape Letters, Miracles, The Problem of Pain, The Four Loves, and then the last one that's called Surprised by Joy. Now, when I started reading Surprised by Joy, and I have it here, ready on the page that I want to read from, C.S. Lewis quite quickly states in this book that this is going to be a book about his life, his childhood, his education, etc. And it could be boring for you, and if this is the kind of thing that doesn't interest you, then don't read this book. He actually says, don't read this book if you're not interested in his early life. And I'll be honest, I'm much more interested in his writings on Christianity than I am in his life itself as a child and where he was educated. So I did think to myself, this may not be a book that I'm that interested in. However, I have read the other 6 books and there's one left, and I kind of just want to read all of them now rather than just leave one book unread. So I decided to plow through it, and I wasn't that interested in it, I'll be honest. There was a lot of stuff about his childhood and where he went to school and his relationship with his dad and his brother, and that might interest some people. I'm not saying it's boring, I'm just saying for me it wasn't what I wanted to read from him. I was more interested in what he had to say about Christianity. I did know, however, that at some point he was going to get to his conversion to Christianity, because he was an atheist for some time, and that part I did want to read about. And while reading this book and reaching the later stages of it, there was something interesting that C.S. Lewis said. He mentioned why he so despised Christianity as an atheist. What was one of the key reasons why he just did not like this faith at all? And it's actually probably quite a surprising reason, because it isn't the standard reason that you may expect, that it was bigoted or it was intolerant or anything like that. It was a reason that was surprising to me, and I want to actually read a little bit from this book so that you can see for yourself or hear for yourself what this reason is, and then say a little bit about it. So just to give you some context so that I don't have to read too many pages leading up to it, C.S. Lewis is talking about his love of the fantasy world, the mythical world that he was so into in the books that he read, and how it was such a wonderful world compared to the reality that he thought wasn't so wonderful at all, and it was actually quite horrible. But then he goes on to explain why even that horrible reality that he thought this was still better than being a Christian. So let's go. It might be grim and deadly. He's talking about the reality that we live in here. It might be grim and deadly, but at least it was free from the Christian God. Some people, not all, will find it hard to understand why this seemed to me such an overwhelming advantage. But you must take into account both my history and my temperament. The period of faith which I had lived through at Oldie's had contained a good deal of fear. Oldie was one of his teachers. And by now, looking back on that fear and egged on by Shaw and Voltaire and Lucretius with his Tantum Religio, I greatly exaggerated that element in my memory and forgot the many other elements which had been combined with it. At all costs I was anxious that those full moon-lit nights in the dormitory should never come again. I was also, as you may remember, one whose negative demands were more violent than his positive, far more eager to escape pain than to achieve happiness, and feeling it something of an outrage that I had been created without my permission. To such a craven, the materialist universe had the enormous attraction that it offered you limited liabilities. No strictly infinite disaster could overtake you in it. Death ended all. And if ever finite disasters proved greater than one wished to bear, suicide would always be possible. The horror of the Christian universe was that it had no door marked exit. And that is essentially one of the reasons that C.S. Lewis despised Christianity, because you couldn't just check out of life when you had enough of it. As an atheist, you do have that option. At any point you can say, I'm not playing this game anymore. I never consented to be here, which would be hard to do because before you existed, you weren't able to consent to anything. But still, it's true. You didn't actually consent to exist. However, you do have the power to cease to exist. Now, with Christianity, that isn't the case. Because even if you end your life here, this is just a form of your existence. God has created us in his image, and therefore we are infinite. We have souls that cannot perish. We have souls that cannot die. So even if we end our physical life here on this planet, we're still going to exist. And this is something that for some reason bothered C.S. Lewis. Some people might find that very strange, that someone would have an issue with the fact that they can live forever. But I suppose I understand his argument when he says, look, he didn't actually agree to exist at all. And this is a terrible existence with all kinds of horrible things that happen, all kinds of suffering. And he liked the idea that at any point he can say, nope, I never actually asked to be here, and so I'm ending it. I'm leaving this game. I'm no longer being this character anymore. And it's a fair point he raises, because whether you're a believer or a non-believer, it is true that you didn't really get the freedom to decide whether you would exist. You know, as believers, we believe God wanted us to exist, each one of us, and so he made us. And of course, as I said, before we even existed, we weren't able to say, well, actually, I don't want to exist. We just were put into existence. And even non-believers would believe that they don't believe that God did it, but they'll believe that, you know, they didn't exist and now suddenly they do exist, and they never actually got a choice as to whether they would or they wouldn't. And so, even though we do have a lot of free will in this world, that's one freedom that we don't have, I suppose. We never got to decide whether we would exist. And what C.S. Lewis didn't like was that, as well as not getting to decide that, we also don't get to decide when we stop existing, if we believe in God and we're Christian. What are your thoughts on this whole idea? Do you understand C.S. Lewis, or do you think that it's a little bit over the top and an odd reason for him to dislike Christianity? Surprised by Joy is still my least favourite of this collection of 7 books that I read by C.S. Lewis. However, there were some interesting gems in there, and this was one of them, something I didn't know. And it involved Christianity. That's what I wanted to read from C.S. Lewis, the things he has to say about Christianity. And I knew that even though I may not be that interested in his biography, there was going to be something in there at some point about his conversion. And this was kind of the lead up to his conversion, and him talking about what bothered him a lot about Christianity. Thank you very much for watching the video, folks. Do please leave a comment. I'm interested to see what you think about this C.S. Lewis idea about Christianity before he became one himself. God bless. Have a blessed day.